Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Penfield Planning Board's June 13th Planning Board meeting. We have several items before us this evening. We'll listen to the applicants. We'll have questions from the board and then accept questions from members in the audience. Following the public hearing, we'll deliberate in the back of the auditorium all matters before us. Should you have any questions after this hearing, please feel free to call the planning office. Katie.
Application number 1, Kip Finley, Indus Companies, 1 Corporate Place, 1170 Pittsford Victor Road, Pittsford, New York, 14534. Requests under Articles 3-3-10 and 9-9-2 of the Code Preliminary and Final Site Plan and EPOD Permit approval to allow the construction of a 70 to 75 room, 6-story hotel and associated improvements on 3.2 acres located at 950 Panorama Trail South. The property is now formally owned by RDG Incorporated and is zoned limited industrial. Application number 13P-0020, SBL number 139.09-1-60.1.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kip. If anybody is here for this project and you want to move closer to see these, feel free to. I don't bite. We had a little miscommunication. I was thinking there was a projector, and so we didn't really bring the big drawings. So welcome to come up. If it's okay with the board, what I thought I would do is just give a little bit of an overview for the public and for the record, and then I went through all of the comments received to date, and I came up with just what I think are the big talking points as far as comments. We can go through all the comments if you want, but I figure we'll hit the big things first, if that's okay. The project that we're proposing as Indus Development is to erect a 70 to 75 room hotel on Panorama Trail where the former rinky-dink golf course was. If anybody grew up in the 80s there and played golf there, that's the spot. It'll be a limited service hotel versus full service where they have banquet facilities and a restaurant and a bar and all that. This is more of the rooms, some amenities, fitness room, a pool, breakfast in the morning, things like that. Right now we don't have the brand determined. We've probably talked about different ones. Right now we are checking a variety of them, but it will be something mid-range like a Holiday Inn Express or Hampton Inn or something of that caliber. That's why it has the pool and the breakfast and that. I think we will be here for several meetings, pretty much every Thursday night through June, and then into July and maybe one in August. It's a pretty unique site if anybody's been there. Very hilly. We abut the creek in the back, so we have a huge drop off in the back of the property. It's about 3.2 acres of land, and when you take all of the setbacks that you need to obey for building in this limited industry or light industrial zoning that it is, there's only about 0.6 acres of land to build on, which isn't enough for a hotel. But it's a great site. It's what we perceive to be a pretty good use in an industrial zoning that's abutting residential and business zoning, so it's a good transitional type use. The reason I bring all that up is we will be going to the zoning board. We have an application in for a variety of things where we're requesting relief from certain aspects of the code to just help us to fit things in by the book. When if we had 3.2 acres of a flat site in a rectangle, it would be a lot easier, but it wouldn't turn out to be as nice of a project when it's all done. Having been in the process for several weeks now, we did get comments from town engineering, the town planning review committee, the county design review committee, conservation board. I think that's all we should have had. If you know of others, let me know. But I went through all of those, and we have Steve Pum here with Razak Engineers, who's doing our design work, and also Jet Meta behind him from Indus Development. And we picked out 8 of the topics we thought were probably the biggest planning issues that you'd have questions about, and that's what I handed out, so you could write notes on that. And if you've had a chance to skim through it and you want to add number 9 or 10 or 11, let me know, and I'll hopefully have an answer for you, and then we can go through those. Is that okay? Sound all right? On this plan, I forgot. That's all right, I'll stay close. On this plan, we had questions regarding a 12-foot gore area. What this is, we had property that was surveyed in East Rochester, over in here. Property surveyed in Penfield, over here. They used their benchmarks, and they surveyed, and sometime over history, they never touched. So this is a strip of land that's not deeded to anyone. We talked with our attorney and talked with our surveyor to document that. The best option to actually deal with that in the future would be a boundary line agreement to just each neighbor take a piece and we agree where the line is. Since it's an undeeded area and there's no overlap, there's no fighting for who has what part, so it really doesn't affect the review. We don't have an encumbrance on the property that we really have to deal with right now, but that's one way to deal with it. Another big thing that we didn't know right off the bat, but our surveyors uncovered it, there's a dashed line on your drawing that comes into the property quite a bit. That's a DOT easement. It's a permanent easement, but I've read it through several times. Our surveyors have read it through several times. It's basically worded like a temporary easement as far as being used for construction of that road. As you can picture, Panorama Trail is kind of in a gully of sorts where they excavated the road through the side of the hill to get it up that steady grade. And the easement is meant to give DOT the permission to access the property if they ever have to address soil sloughing off or an embankment sloughing off. It specifically says in the last paragraph that it's not to inhibit development of the property, and surveyors have requested DOT's surveyor to make a determination on that, so then we can give you a definite. But right now, we have one corner of our porte cochere, that covered entrance over the doorway, is in that. I think actually 2 of them are. But we have designed the building to be right on the fringe of that. It doesn't prohibit parking lots, walls. It really doesn't prohibit anything. New York State DOT access. One of the comments had talked about a turn lane on the highway, and I started looking through the county review comments to see what DOT said, and it actually noted that the county planner did not send the plans to DOT. Having worked with DOT, I know they have jurisdiction. They need to be brought into this. So we sent out a letter yesterday requesting Dave Guerin to give us some input on the project. Very similar to a hotel we built in Geneva on a 4-lane highway on a fairly steep grade. And the traffic that we generate is so minimal that they never required us to do anything with turn lanes and that. So I'm hoping that will be their answer. We definitely know we need to work with them for utilities in the right-of-way. We do probably have to fix up the driveway apron to make it compliant. I think Panorama Trail was redone in the late 70s or 80s. Emergency vehicle access. This one I'm hoping to get input from planning board or staff or both. A couple of comments talk about the turning movements for fire trucks and aisle widths and that. We've made the assumption that fire trucks are going to be coming up to the back of the property up here. And this is designed to be able to circulate a single body hook and ladder around here and come back down the hill. We also assume that probably for the front of the building, since it's a lot tighter, that would be more for ambulances, EMTs, smaller vehicles. So anything that comes through here would have to pass through under the porte cochere. Those usually run about 11 feet tall. No problem for an ambulance, pickup truck, sheriff's car, anything like that. So one of my key questions would be, does the planning board see it the same way? That wasn't the answer I was hoping for.
Do you want to discuss that now, or did you want to finish going through your list?
Either way. I haven't been to a public hearing in Penfield in a long time. If you want, we can.
We'll leave it entirely up to you. If you want to keep going, keep
I'm
your
anxious.
momentum.
I'm anxious to know.
Okay. Well, we have a couple of issues with respect to the fire department access. The first one really deals with the slope, and as you know, a ladder truck can bottom out on a slope. The town engineer made a suggestion that we get closer to a 10% grade at the entrance coming off of Panorama Trail. The state fire code actually requires a maximum 10% grade, so we'll have to make sure that we do that. I'd also ask you to consider putting in some grooved pavement, just because.
For traction going up the hill?
And it's not really, going up is one thing, coming down under icy conditions might be another. So, at any rate, there's a couple other things happening. The first one is you're going to need a fire department connection. You pointed that out in your application. The fire department connection is generally at what we call the street front face of the road. So, as soon as the first emergency responder shows up, they can identify where that is by its sign and direct the pumper truck to park in proximity to that connection. So, in looking at the floor plan and the site, we're thinking that facing the building, it would be in the right front corner.
There?
So you'll need to work that out with the fire marshal and the fire department to accommodate what they think is going to be best use. But in any event, it would be awfully difficult to provide a turnaround or a hammerhead that met the dimensional criteria of the appendix in the state fire code for fire apparatus. And of course, you may be relying on a neighboring fire department to come to, and their apparatus might be a little different. So now when we get around to the back of the site, we appreciate what you're calling a single body fire truck. What we'd like you to do is contact the fire chief and find out exactly what the dimensions are and the wheel space of that, and plug that into auto turn and provide the board with an actual step-by-step turn to show that with cars parked in these spaces that you could get that apparatus that the town suggests should fit in that site all the way around this infiltration basin. And we know that you are meeting with the zoning board, and you might want to wait until you find out whether or not you're going to get relief on the 18-foot deep spots, because that's going to make an impact on available.
Yeah, with that one, a similar comment was it said 18-foot parking aisles, and we weren't sure if you were talking about 18 feet deep parking spaces or this one-way aisle in the front.
Yeah, well, actually, he was referring to the depth of the space.
Okay.
So, but it does bring up an interesting point with respect to the one-way drive aisle that you have around the loop after you come out of the porte cochere. Again, if you're not granted relief, then that 18-foot width becomes 14 feet, potentially. So there's some things here that you're going to need to come out of the zoning board with some positive feedback before
Yes.
you can address some of these issues.
Definitely.
Okay?
But an 18-foot one-way aisle should be okay, as long as it's one way, correct?
Flag that at all.
Okay. And even technically a 14 would probably be okay, but we'd need to slant the
14 would
parking.
probably be okay, except when you're coming out of a tight radius and you're in a wide body, I'm sure, as you know, EMS vehicles have become quite large and self-contained, so,
Yeah.
you know, if you're coming out of there in a larger vehicle, you know, that might be a little more challenging, and it's something that you're going to need to engineer.
We'll check that, but that clarifies what we were asking, because there's two things that were 18 feet. As far as the 30-foot wide aisles, there was a suggestion we could maybe save space. It's a good suggestion, but I think as far as on the main driveway coming up, if we have a pumper or something reinforcing the flow in the Siamese connection, we need the room to get another truck around. So 30's probably as narrow as we would go, and in the back too, it helps get the vehicle circulated around. So we may not go to request a narrower aisle, but it's an idea.
Well, there's another potential issue. Buildings over 4 stories in height have some different criteria for emergency access vehicles that may need to park. A ladder truck, for instance, that might be parked there for 3 hours. And there's some dimensional criteria for where that space starts, how far off the face of the building, and what that minimum width is. So we
the out-
overlaid this onto your plan, and it potentially works if you get relief on the depth of the parking spaces, and potentially doesn't work if you don't.
Okay.
So there's
We
there's
figured-
another issue there that's kind of dependent on the zoning board.
I know exactly what you're talking about. The outriggers go out quite a bit further than the truck. And some models have adjustable and some don't. We figured the safest place to have a hook and ladder is on the flat area in the back on the parking lot. That's why we have this wide with no parking spaces.
That unfortunately doesn't work,
No,
that particular location.
that's why we're calling the fire department.
Well, we'll provide these comments to
Okay.
you so that you can understand what the limitations are. But if that's the side that needs to accommodate this minimum depth, it has to be parallel to one entire side of the building is the way the regulation reads. So it could potentially require your infiltration basin to move out.
Oh, okay, well, we'll check it. I mean, we do have it parallel to that one whole side and figured
Yep,
that's
it's
our
yeah,
access side.
They measure it 15 feet off the face of the building, so all that extra pavement doesn't really count,
All right.
you know? You get emergency vehicles parked too close to a building on fire, they don't survive real well, so.
I know, they get upset when the paint melts and stuff. All right, we'll have to have a meeting with the fire
Anyhow,
department.
we'll ask you to finish your presentation, and we can talk about a couple of other things.
Okay, well, that covered 2 of them, the emergency vehicle access and parking circulation, things like that. The buffer to residential zoning, that would be one of the biggest items that we're asking for relief for. The golf course, driving range that's over off of Washington is technically in residential zoning. And residential zoning to an industrial use is 150 feet of setback to the building and buffer, so that you don't have a home right next to a factory. In our case, we have 62 feet from the building to the property line, and we don't really have an industrial building. So we are hoping with a combination of some setback and landscaping, and the fact that we don't really have houses on the residential and we don't have a factory on the industrial, that we'll be able to get some relief on that one. All of the other bulk standards are actually pretty close. We're not asking for huge relief, or we're asking for setback relief for a shed or a gazebo or something small. Construction staging questions came up. Basically, the back parking lot is going to be most of our construction staging until we get the front loop built up and the retaining wall in, and then that can also be construction staging. And the used car lot, or I don't think that's the used part. The car lot next door has a couple of spaces of their display over on our property. That's a company that we know pretty well. I don't know yet, we haven't discussed if we'd make them remove that or if we would just come up with something, an agreement to make it legitimate to have it there. Is there a feeling like, does it have to go as long as we make it legal?
Can speak to that.
Okay.
The car dealership is a conditional use, so unless a conditional use permit is requested and a hearing is held, it would need to be removed. And
Okay.
we've actually informed Vision Dodge through their expansion application that the board just approved last meeting, and they removed it on their drawings, so
All right, okay.
it should
it's
be removed. Unless you'd like to go through the process, of course.
I don't think we're that friendly. I mean, it's a lot of process to go through for one car. We'll talk about that. Has anybody thought of a number 9, 10, 11?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Most of the engineering comments were actually made sense, and there's really not much to talk about for most of them.
And you'll have a formal response to all of the agency comments that you got?
He's already started it. Yep. Yeah, we just got it, I think, Tuesday. Well, we did go through them and to be prepared, but Steve doesn't type quite that fast.
You'll provide the board with a copy of that DOT easement so we could see what that language was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, Bob. I think when you read it, you'll understand, but we did request an interpretation too, because it's DOT's easement.
With respect to my item number 4, there's a parking space that's adjacent to what you're calling your storage shed, which is adjacent to your dumpster enclosure. That parking space is being encroached upon, at least in plan view. So that space is not really usable. I think you should get some feedback from engineering and from the zoning board. I don't know if you can call that a motorcycle space or, a go-kart space or something like that. But, if it means that your actual number is 74 instead of 75, you want to make sure you point that out.
We have room to slide it down. I will say that's a graphical error.
Okay?
They're okay with you?
The clearance at the Port Cocher, we would ask that you work with the fire department and the fire marshal's office to make sure that that is adequate clearance.
There's quite a bit of flexibility architecturally. A foot or two isn't tough.
Okay? There seems at cursory glance to be very little snow storage for our climate. Small little pots of storage adjacent to fairly large impervious surface. Can you comment on any studies that you might have done with respect to snow storage on a site that you can't really just push it over the hill?
No, well, we definitely know it can't go over the back hill. Those are erodible soils, and it's a steep slope. I'm sure there will be some, like maybe a little bit piled there as they go through. It really needs to be over here at the end. If this, we don't actually have it drawn in along here when they're plowing and doing their fly on the plow. It's going to be tight. There may be times when we have to actually put it into the infiltration area, if we have to push it up over the curb, and that, so that it is actually going into there.
There may be times when you have to put it into a truck and,
Yeah, if
haul
we have
it
a
off the
blizzard or
site.
something, it's possible.
okay? So if that were to be a condition, you wouldn't have any issue with that?
I guess if it's conditioned on our judgment of whether we should take it away.
I don't think anybody's going to drive up there in a snowstorm, but, you know what happens. We see what happens is you get an application where, and we agree with you through reasoning, you might not need the number of spaces that your client might like or the town code might might want. But you're asking for relief from the minimum number of spaces, and if you end up taking up another 6 spaces in snow storage, then, that can kind of
It's an
bottleneck
impact.
things. So.
Yeah, with the infiltration area, basically, I don't know if a lot of people are used to seeing them. Mostly, we're kind of conditioned to seeing ponds nowadays. But this case, it's going to be a depressed lawn area. It's very sandy soil. We've had our borings done, and the infiltration is very good. So snow storage in that lawn area where it will melt and infiltrate is fine too. So that it really leaves this open for snow storage too.
A little bit.
Some. We'll have to be creative, but we also have landscaping we want to protect. We have the parking that we need. So, I mean, there are reasons for us to take it seriously and make sure we don't have huge snowbanks.
Have you had an opportunity, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I saw the comment about sight distance for that one spot where we had a snow pile at an intersection.
Had an opportunity to engage somebody to do the hydraulic analysis for the fire service at the top of the facility.
That would be Razak. Could you?
We will be going through the process with Monroe County Water Authority doing.
Oh,
Sure.
please.
Yep. We will be going through the approval process with Monroe County Water Authority along with Indus's mechanical engineer for hydraulic analysis of the fire service. We do anticipate on a booster pump being involved along with the 6-inch service going to the building. So we will be going through all of that.
So it appears with the heights that you're dealing with and the height from the location of the main, that it's very realistically possible that you'll need a fire pump. So we'd like to see the proposed location of where the pump house would be on the site.
Okay. I don't think we actually have had any in our hotels so far, so we'll have to research it. I know if we have a generator, it would be outside to run it for the backup. The fire pump itself, I guess I'm not that experienced with them.
Would typically be outside for a 6-story hotel. It would be a fairly large pump.
Okay.
We could talk further with mechanical.
Yeah, in that case, the water supply, I believe, is fed from the top and bottom, so that we actually have pressure head from further up the hill that may take care of it, and maybe it won't. We do check that for all of our projects.
And firefighter access to the roof, does that one stair tower extend all the way to the roof?
We haven't designed the building that far. The concept drawings do show it that way,
With a penthouse
as far as
to
just going.
walk out onto the roof?
There is always a possibility that guests can't go down. So this is our first 6-story building, so we're gonna have some learning. We have a 4-story now where we provide a hatch with a ladder that's there so that guests could be directed up through the hatch and they could be removed from the roof. I think we'll have to go probably a little better than that for a 6-story building.
As an aside, this has nothing to do with the planning board, but if you choose to do that, you're going to have to provide a physical barrier to accommodate the number of people that you think might go to this exterior area of refuge.
Our parapets are usually about 5 or 6 feet tall, where no one could fall off the roof. They'd be contained.
Qualify.
Okay. That was actually another topic. If anybody's been copied on the variance requests, our building is 6 stories, which doesn't require any variance for height, but even though our roof deck is about 65 feet or so for a 6-story building, the parapets are going to be higher on some of the marquee areas where the signage goes. So it was advised we at least request a variance to go higher with zoning board's discretion, explain that to them. So that would be another thing that you'll see through the process. So, but we'll say we're making them high enough to keep people from falling off the roof if they have to go up. So that's another hardship to put on there for this variance application.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Anyone else on the board? Anyone in the audience?
Was no one here to listen to this?
For the most part, people are receptive to this plot being developed, and a hotel is probably less obtrusive than what could have been in there, and I think we're happy to see it.
Okay, great. We're pretty excited about this
Got a
site.
ways to go, that's all.
Yeah, it does.
A lot of issues.
Just in asking, now when the hearing's closed and you have deliberation afterward, we're so early in the process, should we stick around for discussion, or is it?
That is entirely up to you, but staff recommends that you do.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
The discussion firsthand as opposed to whatever I write up top.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks.
Application number 2, Joseph Ardietta, Vanguard Engineering, 241 Castle Bar Road, Rochester, New York, 14610. On behalf of Plank Road Development LLC, requests under Articles 3-3-10, 8-8-2, and 9-9-2 of the Code Final Site Plan Subdivision and E-Pod permit approval under Town Law 278 to construct 21 single-family homes on 33.85 acres, located at 899 Plank Road to be known as Crown Point Section 2. The property is now or formerly owned by Plank Road Development LLC and is zoned R-1-20. Application number 13P-0019, SPL number 094.18-1-6.211.
Good evening. My name is Joe Ardietta of Vanguard Engineering. Tonight representing Plank Road Development LLC for the Crown Point Subdivision Section 2 project. Forgive me for using the easel, but I brought a Kandinsky tonight for you art lovers. I have 2 sets, so that's why I didn't pin it up on the board. Just to give you an overview of the project, it's the second phase in this residential subdivision. Section 2 complies with the preliminary subdivision that was approved back in circa 2005. However, the boundaries for Section 2 have altered, and I'll get into that as to why a little later. We're proposing 21 lots on 13.1 acres. There's a portion of land here that's approximately 0.8 acres to be dedicated to the town, and approximately 2 acres will be right-of-way. The remaining land will be single-family homes. This project, just to give you an overview of the overall subdivision, was granted as a cluster subdivision under 278. So some of the requirements for the lots were a minimum lot area of 17,000 square feet, 85-foot lot width, 40-foot front setback, 10-foot side, 30-foot rear, and 85-foot minimum lot width, I believe. Section 2 complies with that. In fact, Section 2, the lots and the design and layout for the most part, and the lots definitely comply with the approved preliminary plan. The only real deviation that we made was the boundary of Section 2 from the original preliminary. And we adjusted some utilities based on our analysis of the layout that was done previously. We adjusted the sanitary and storm sewers towards the northern end here, but we can get into that if you'd like a little later. Oh, look what's falling off. So here's a blow-up of Section 2. We propose to extend Crown Point Drive to the southeast and east and add 13 lots. We also propose to extend, actually, really for the most part, create Knightbridge Circle and place 8 lots. The reason for the change in the boundary and this layout is to add flexibility during construction for the project. The applicant will construct Crown Point Drive, and as the homes are sold, if the market is good and there's demand, they'll continue immediately with the construction of Knightbridge Circle. However, if sales are flat and they're unable to fill up this portion, they may reserve constructing the infrastructure here in order to save on capital. And that's purely the reason for doing it this way. The utilities will have standard domestic water supply from the Water Authority. Sanitary, sewer, and storm are all provided on the project. The project boundary does not encroach any adjacent parcels yet. Future sections will. The pond here in the southwest corner will take most of the runoff from Section 2. A portion here is going to go to the existing pond at the northwest corner of Section 1. There are wetlands. There are U.S. Army Corps of Engineer and New York State DEC wetlands in the vicinity here to the southwest. The project received permits by both agencies. The Army Corps of Engineers permit is still in effect, and we can forward the copy of the permit to the office if you don't have it. The New York State DEC permit actually expired, and we just found that out recently. So we contacted DEC, and we're now communicating with Tom Haley of DEC to reapply for the permit with the same parameters as was granted in the original permit. Were you able to receive, we finished our comment response letter this afternoon and emailed it, but I don't know if you all received it.
I don't believe, no, the board members did not receive that. I'm not.
Okay. Yeah,
Some of our staff was in a meeting all afternoon, so it may.
and I emailed it about 3:15. But, so, I brought it. So if you'd like, if we can go over any comments that you'd like.
Good to go?
I am good to go.
Okay. I sat in on PRC yesterday, and there was only 1 or 2 sticky points that I saw. One of them was the walkway. Did we resolve that yesterday?
I was not at the meeting. However, my associate, John Girolamo, and my client, I see you coming up before me, Steve Filippone, was.
Okay.
So I'll let Steve do the talking.
Good evening. I'm Steve Filippone for Brandon Homes and Plank Road Development, LLC. That particular issue, I believe we did resolve that we were not going to pursue this pedestrian connection between residential lots at this time, so.
Wondered where that went. I had to leave at 11:30, and Didn't hear the end. One of the other things that I picked up was that there were plantings around the pond area. They were proposed. Was that something that,
We certainly can add some plantings there, but I don't specifically have I don't remember a comment specifically addressing the plantings for the pond.
Our plan proposes a row of conifer trees. Also, the wetland itself, we will provide wetland planting list for the area within the pond itself. And we'll plant it with species, or we'll specify species that are DEC compliant.
all right. I don't have any other questions. Anybody on the board? Anyone in the audience like to speak to this project?
I just have a question. My name is George Robertson. I live at 20 Crown Point Drive. I'm just curious about the drainage in that pond and how things are flowing there. Does that flow down behind my home or from that pond, or does it flow back into the wetland? And how are you managing that?
Sure. I imagine you're up here.
I'm
close.
right here.
You're right there, okay. The drainage,
Well-
Plank Road is up here.
I'm right here, I believe.
One more.
Right here?
Yes.
Is this lot 110?
That's 108. You're
I'm 109 right
Yeah,
here.
you're right
Okay,
there.
so I'm right here. So I'm curious, is this like going to be flowing down through here, through my yard, or does this flow off this way?
No, my understanding is that the pond actually discharges into the wetland here. So, no, it wouldn't convey to the northwest, it'll actually convey more to the west
Okay.
and into the wetland. This portion of the subdivision goes to the pond, this portion, and much of the future northern portion goes to the pond over here. It
Okay.
will not even be routed
Okay.
near your home.
Okay.
There's a large storm pipe just past the curve there, if I'm not mistaken, either running between, at this property line or the next lots here, where that water discharges to that regional facility that we constructed part of and then the town added to. So there's only the backside of these lots, I believe, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yep.
would be collected to this pond. So I don't think there should be any significant additional drainage past your property line there.
That's correct. We have a swale and catch basin system. I'm probably blocking the camera right now, but you can get a good look at my backside for a moment. We have a swale system and catch basin system that's going to convey water this way. We have the street catch basins, and it's all going to a storm system that goes to that manhole, and that manhole goes to here and to this pond here.
Okay. And then just one other question was that if I translate that into plain English, there's something about a sidewalk you guys decided on yesterday? You're not doing something with a sidewalk?
No.
You said some pedestrian thing, so.
Okay. To answer that specifically, one of the comments was they wanted to add, that was not in our prior approval, a taking of a parcel between two lots and putting a sidewalk between two residential lots, which we felt was first not appropriate and would make marketing those two lots very difficult, would also shrink the buildable area to make those lots substandard lots, which we didn't want to do. Would potentially devalue neighboring houses because we're putting smaller houses on there. And frankly, our position is that people really don't want a walkway going down the side of their lot line. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't go
basically didn't-
anywhere either.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think we reached a consensus on that with staff that was something that was going to be abandoned.
Okay.
Or actually not followed through on by them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, George.
Any other questions?
Good evening, Bernie O'Sullivan, I live on Plank Road. Is there any restrictions or hours in general that this development or any other ones within the town that you require the builders to operate within? As far as noise level, these big equipments and everything else, and the beep, 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 beeps, and
Yes, the answer is yes, and I'm going to ask our planning department head, Mark Valentine, to come up and address that.
Mark Valentine, Planning Department. We do have restrictions in our code. It does limit the hours from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, and I believe it is 8 to 4 on Saturdays, and there is no work allowed on Sundays. I don't know if that
Thank you.
answers your question.
Anyone else? And I will close this hearing. Thank you.